Hey everybody, this is Casey back again with Aligned Astrology. Today we're talking about the lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. Now, we might consider this a partial lunar eclipse just because the nodes have already shifted into Aquarius and Leo, and that we have this full moon eclipse in Pisces. It just goes to show we have a couple of degrees difference, but we could also consider it a total lunar eclipse based on the tightness of the orb range. But for the sake of speaking about the shift in nodes, we can call it a partial lunar eclipse. But it is carrying that full effect. This is our last eclipse of the year, and it is carrying a big energy along with it. When we have full moon in the sign of Pisces, it can be a very emotional time. Not to mention, this is an eclipse, so it can intensify those feelings, the experiences that we may have. But it all depends on where it lands in our own particular birth chart. When we talk about the sign angularity, the angular signs will be the mutable signs for this eclipse, speaking about Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, and Jupiter. Or not Jupiter, but Sagittarius. So these mutable signs are going to be carrying that energy, being that they are in square opposition of this eclipse. Now, the reason I say Jupiter is because all that's on my mind right now in regards to this lunar eclipse, because Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. Jupiter is in the watery domicile of Pisces at home. It is a mutable sign, but we know Jupiter to be in the sign of Leo right now. Jupiter has recently moved into Leo this summer, and it will be here until nearing the end of next summer. So we can start to talk about Leo because we just recently had a solar eclipse in the sign of Leo. Jupiter is present here, and Jupiter, being the ruler of this eclipse, is still speaking, is still showing itself to us. So when we start to look at the delineations of these planetary bodies, we start to see how they connect with one another for this lunar eclipse. We can see the flavoring that Jupiter will offer to this eclipse as well. The moon is going to be at 4 degrees opposing to the sun to create this lunar eclipse. And when we pull up the chart and we begin to look, we'll see that we're coming out of a Mercury cazimi as well. Mercury is at 5 degrees right now in the sign of Virgo, separating from the sun where it experienced the cazimi. We'll talk more about that. But we also have the planet Uranus in the sign of Gemini at 5 degrees, and it's bending this eclipse. It's in a square opposition or a square aspect between Virgo and Pisces. So we can think about this T square and place Uranus at the top of it, or the apex, we could say. And when we start to factor in what Uranus is as the liberator, the one that causes sudden things to shift, we can see how Uranus can speak to this eclipse as well. So we have a number of different things going on around this lunar eclipse. If the lunar eclipse wasn't enough, lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces, ruled by Jupiter in the sign of Leo. It's very interesting how Jupiter is ruled by the sun, which is basically eclipsing the moon right now. So we can start to see the importance of the sun in the sign of Virgo with the Mercury cazimi eclipsing this moon, which is under the dominion, under the rulership of Jupiter at this point in time. So it's like it's kind of a interesting relationship going on right now. The moon is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is ruled by the sun, and the sun is eclipsing the moon. It's kind of like a ring, a connection in that way. So let's talk about Pisces and the lunar eclipse. Eclipses, lunar eclipses, meaning that they are full moons, are considered to be culmination points, like the highest point of an experience. Not necessarily an ending just yet, but we reach the top. We reach the forefront of this experience. We experience a fated event. That's what eclipses bring about. Events of fate, things that are meant to happen in our experience, so that way we can learn something from these times in our lives. And depending on how it shows up for us, it could be something of great challenge. It could be something of great revelation. It can bring some realization into our lives, helping us to see ourselves more clearly and what direction we may be going in. There's not much control that we have over eclipses. A lot of the times we may look to astrology to see how we can control an outcome, how we can change or order an outcome. But when there is an eclipse, there's usually always something of fate that is going to occur, something that we don't have much control over. So, to speak about the sign of Pisces as a sign of illusion, and from time to time can be very vague when we think about direction. It is also a sign of mysticism or religion and spirituality, things along these lines. When we start to think about this water immutable sign, we tend to think about our dreams and visions, and not necessarily the reality of life. So when we start to look at the opposing side of this moon in Pisces, we look at the sun in Virgo, which is very realistic, very critical from time to time. It wants to do the step by step by the book. And we have Mercury here in its own domicile, in its own home in the sign of Virgo, just coming out of a cazimi. And we know that when a planet enters into a cazimi, into that close conjunction, into that 1 degree with the sun within 17 minutes of range, it is considered to be in the throne room of the king. It receives great exaltation, not to mention that Mercury is already exalted in the sign of Virgo. It is its home sign too, so it's like it's triple dipping right now. It's in its home sign, it's exalted in Virgo, and it's getting cazimi. So this can show us that even through the illusions and the mist, the fog, we can still gain some great clarity, some great insight from this lunar eclipse because of Mercury cazimi. Mercury is the planet of communication, of the mind, of clarity, even. And when it's in the sign of Virgo, in its place of exaltation, and in a cazimi aspect, we can gain great understanding. We can communicate clearly. We can receive information very clearly. And it's not to say that we don't receive information from a Pisces moon, a full moon in Pisces. We receive it in form of intuition and in form of feeling. And that's what this full moon eclipse can be bringing up for us. In my own personal experience, it is an emotional sort of energy, an energy where you can begin to look at your life and see how things are, and feel something from it. And then we notice a full moon is a culmination point. It brings things to a head. It helps you to see, okay, this is where I am right now in my experience. What is fate going to show me now in regards to the direction that we need to move in? Now, to speak about the planet Uranus in the sign of Gemini, which is a new territory for us. It's going to be here for 7 years. We get to experience this square aspect, how it's imparting its expression onto the sun and moon in Pisces and Virgo from the sign of Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury at this point. we can see Uranus as like the higher octave of Mercury. And this is more of a mundane perspective. Me as a traditional astrologer usually stick to the seven traditional planets, but I in my practice I always use Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. So as we speak about the planet Uranus as the liberator, I always like to say Uranus is the one who flips the table over. Everything's all over the place. We're not going to put it back to the way it was. It Uranus wants to help us take a 180-degree turn and go in a different direction. It causes sudden shocks and realizations, revelations in our experience. And when we have a full moon, lunar eclipse in Pisces, it can be a great insight that we receive. It can be something that comes in a form of a dream. It can be something that comes in a form of a vision or a simple insight, a true intuition that we may experience, depending on how tuned in we may be. So, with all these different things being said, I want to also speak about Jupiter, the ruler of this eclipse, in the sign of Leo. When Jupiter is in the sign of Leo, it takes on the characteristics of Leo. It wants to be very boisterous and loud and expansive and expressive. Of course, on a mundane perspective, this can be correlated with kings and rulers and leaders. But on a personal perspective, coming into our own particular lives, when we see Jupiter in the sign of Leo, it still wants to be loud, but it wants to grow things. It wants to bring things into the public eye, because Leo is like the star of the show. And whatever we're doing in our lives right now has potential to come to the forefront in our experience. Once again, based on our rising sign, we can see where these planetary bodies are landing in our zodiacal chart. And depending on if it's above the horizon, above the ascendant and descendant, or below the horizon, we can determine for ourselves how public this will be or not. But as we look through the 12 horoscopes today, we'll go into a little bit more detail as to how this is going to be affecting each particular rising sign. We're going to touch on the eclipse for each one of us, as well as the ruler and how Jupiter may be expressing itself. I know we have so much different things going on with this one, but we don't want to flood you with information. A lot of times when I do the horoscopes, I see everything and I want to give you everything in one round of horoscopes, but we'll just have to record more and do more videos if that's the case. We're going to pull up the chart now. Sharing the screen, we can look at the transits for August 28th. So, me living in Buffalo, New York, this lunar eclipse is going to be culminating right after midnight on the 28th. So, today this is being recorded on August 27th. I guess we could say this is considered to be the day of the eclipse, but it is culminating very, very late tonight, moving into the 28th. And like we spoke about, this eclipse is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in the sign of Leo, where the nodes have just shifted. South node into Leo, north node into Aquarius. But having a Jupiter ruled lunar eclipse has potential to help us grow in some way. Helps us to notice what is gaining momentum in our lives, what is expanding, whether we want it to or not. Where are we being seen for the different things in our lives? Where are we being seen for our action or non-action? How do we get to learn from whatever is being presented to us here and now, whether it be on an emotional level or an experiential level, like in our physical reality and connection with people? We get to see how this eclipse is going to express itself for us. Now, once again, we just said we have that Mercury separating from the sun, coming out of that Mercury cazimi. And like I said before, it's a little bit easier to see it and go over it on the chart. But like I said, being that this is a lunar eclipse in Pisces, we look to the moon. The moon is being ruled by Jupiter, but Jupiter is being ruled by the sun, and that sun is eclipsing the moon. So that brings the power to the sun, right? So we look to the sun, and being that it just had that Kazemi, we can see the power of how Uranus could be showing itself, how clarity can be coming from this lunar eclipse, how sudden shifts and changes in our direction, in our path can be coming in based off of only God knows what could be happening for each one of us. Of course, we can go over the mundane perspectives and do what we're going to do in these horoscopes right now and give you a bunch of different ideas of what it may be. But only you know based off of your own particular astrology, based off your own particular planetary placements. Because when these planets transits our own natal planets, they have a bit more of effect in our own particular lives. Now, just to speak once more about this lunar eclipse, we have it with the North Node, meaning that we are going to be changing direction. When there is a South Node, there's something that we need to let go of, but there's something here that needs to be gained from this experience. Of course, we see full moons usually as culmination points where we reach the peak of an experience. But this is, yes, this is like climbing to the top of the mountain to see across the horizon to realize what's next. Okay, I've reached the top of the mountain. Now I must come down from the mountain and venture on and move into the next thing, whatever that may be. So hopefully that information lands for you in your own experience, whatever you may be going through, emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever the case may be. May these horoscopes be of benefit to you based on your rising sign. We can listen to our sun sign, we can listen to our moon sign, we can listen to our Mars, our Venus. But if you want it to line up with your whole sign houses, we need to listen to the rising sign. And we are going to begin with the sign of Aries. Aries Rising, you experience this lunar eclipse in Pisces in the 12th house, and the 12th house is correlated with the things unseen about ourselves. Each and every person we come in contact with has an impression of us. They see us in a certain way, and they believe us to be however they see us as. But we see ourselves in a different way. And it's important for us to take into consideration what other people think about us and what other people say about us, because this can be an insight into what we don't see about ourselves, who we may be behind the scenes. And when we start to understand this 12th house in a deeper way, we can gain some clarity around the subconscious mind, the genuine intuition and guidance that leads us. Now, there can be a dichotomy of the 12th house here when we start to talk about the unseen or the subconscious or even the unconscious. The unconscious, the subconscious, these are two sides of the same coin, right? Like the subconscious is something we have potential to become aware of, whereas the unconscious is something that we have no clue about, no clue that it even exists. So to be in a relationship with the other, into connection with a person, we can gain some clarity around what may be seen as unconscious for us. And Aries Rising is taking this opportunity to experience some solitude for ourselves, to notice where the emotions are guiding us, the feelings, the intuitions are guiding us. It can give us some clarity in our experience. And when we start to look at what that Kazemi may have had in store for us in the 6th house of health, work, of service, it can show us that wherever we've been putting our efforts can give us some insight into what we need to be moving towards next, what creative endeavors we may need to be fulfilling, or what work we need to be sharing with the people around us. When we talk about astrology, a lot of the times it's going to be correlated with ourselves and the people around us, our relationships. And in this case, this 12th house experience is going to be focused on learning more about ourselves, the things that we don't see. Next, Taurus risings experience this lunar eclipse in Pisces in the 11th house. And the 11th house is the house of good fortune. This is the house where we can receive beneficial things from our acquaintances, from the people we are connected to. The 11th house is also the communities that we are part of. And being that this is the place of intuition, of spirituality or religion, it can be our spiritual communities, Taurus risings. It can be the places that we feel safe to express and be free. And we must understand that in this 11th house, there are many people that are present. And we, being a Taurus rising, can be a part of these emotional feeling communities and experience the connection of these people. But it doesn't mean that we remain. There can be a change. There can be a time of transformation. There can be a lot of things that we can learn from a particular community, and then realize that it's time to leave this community. When we speak about the North Node being present for this lunar eclipse, there's a gaining of something. There's an expanding and improving of something, possibly around ourselves. And then there's a moving on, a transformation of our experience and community. And we can start to think about how this prominently comes from our place of solitude, our own spiritual efforts, our own spiritual work, our own meditative practices and things along those lines can be an initial part of what can be changing our desire for new community, or ending the relationship that we have with this old way of spiritual being. Gemini Rising experiences this lunar eclipse in Pisces for the 10th house. And the 10th house is how we are seen in the world, what we are seen for in the world. When we talk about eclipses, they are fated events and they can call for a challenge to come into our lives. And when we start to talk about this on the angular houses, this is the first angular house that we get to speak about with Pisces in the 10th house. So the ruler of this moon in Pisces is Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the third house of our daily experiences. So this can speak to our day-to-day experience beginning to change in some way. When we start to talk about how it's going to change, it can come from our roots. It can come from our home. It can come from our way of being at home, expressed outward into our public role. Noticing that the fourth house can also be considered as our roots, our upbringing, this clarity that comes from being out in the world, experiencing our lives through the experience of other people, can help us begin to see how our day can change, how our what we offer, what we share can change. Not to mention that Uranus moving through our first house, we are going through years of great change in our experience. And Uranus T squaring both the sun and moon, in this case from our 10th house to our 4th house, we can see just the even exchange of being at home and being out in the world, or working in our own career, and maybe we work from home, and can see just how much great work or effort we can put towards a career from this place of solitude that we have. Now we move on to Cancer Rising. Cancer Rising experiences the full moon lunar eclipse in the ninth house of our higher learnings. It can be our teachers. It can be our spirituality. It can be our opportunity to just move around the world. And as we have Jupiter in the second house, we can come back to the idea of our own expression, our own assets, our own well being that leads us towards a higher way of thinking. It helps us to move forward in even new religious capacities, new spiritual capacities based off the skills that we have cultivated over our experiences. And this lunar eclipse is a time of clarity because that Jupiter is going to grow things, is going to make them more visible, even more visible than we can initially expect from this one. Because usually when we speak about these full moons in Pisces, we say, okay, I'm going to find intuition, I'm going to gain insight, but it's going to be very clear, very direct insight that can turn the tides of how we think about life, how we feel about life, how we experience this reality that we have going on here. Cancer Rising. And notice how the lunar eclipse is going to be changing your way of being. Leo Rising experiences the lunar eclipse in Pisces of the 8th house. And just like we talked about the ninth house as religion and things along those lines, we can correlate Pisces with religion initially, but this is the 8th house of karma, of debts. It can be of spiritual entanglement, spiritual connection that needs to be transformed or severed. It is how other people, our relationships, especially connect with us and see us. But this second house, 8th house axis is a tension. It's the two sides of the same coin. It is our own assets versus the assets of the other. And here, at this culmination point, we can see how we received from the people around us, whatever the Piscean nature that we've gained from our families, from our friends, from our community. Whatever we received from this place is reaching that high point, and now there's a time for a transformation of these energies, a change of these experiences. And we've gained our own understanding. We've learned to formulate and express ourselves in a new way based off of what we may have received from this, and now we can go in a different direction. That's why when we talk about lunar eclipses, the sun eclipsing the moon, it can make me think about it's time to put these experiences to the side. That moon is being obscured while the sun is expressing itself in this way. So that clarity that comes about, that may come through community, that may come through our own communication with the other, helps us to see just how beneficial the things, the experiences that we have received over time have transformed us, have changed us, has molded us into the person that we are now. Virgo, you have this lunar eclipse in Pisces for the 7th house in our one-on-one relationships, a relationship with our spouse, our partner. 7th house in traditional astrology is connected to endings, and with an ending there is a new beginning. But when we start to look at lunar eclipses as that high point, we reach that high point, we begin to come down from the mountain towards that new experience. This can be a deep understanding of how we show up in relationships. It can be a deep understanding of what we want to share about ourselves in relationship, how we want to be of service to the communities that we are a part of. And we also want to mention that that great transformation that can come from our career, that can come as we shift our life. We may choose to do something totally different and be known for something totally different that can help us to just be ourselves more clearly. With that Mercury Kazemi moving through the first house, it can give a lot of insight, a lot of clarity, a lot of understanding about ourselves at this point in time. And when we can know ourselves, we can express ourselves truly, and we can show up in our relationships just as we are, authentically. Authentically. Now, the reason why this is important is because we have this moon in Pisces, the Jupiter ruled sign, and Jupiter's moving through our 12th house, the things that are unseen. So when we can show up authentically, we begin to express the hidden that we may not have known about. And our partner can be that mirror to show us what that looks like. We only can know ourselves truly through the other, the eyes of the other, friends. And you have the opportunity, Virgo. Here, we experience Libra Risings having this lunar eclipse in the sixth house of work and service. Now, when we have a sixth house lunar eclipse, there's some great efforts that we've been taking that have been pushing us to our edge. This is the place where we perform great efforts to achieve a goal. And in the sign of Pisces, maybe it comes natural to us. We usually like to feel it out. We go by intuition. We go with the flow of things. And having a lunar eclipse here can show us that, okay, we've learned lots from this way of being. We've learned so much from this experience in our life. And now it's time to shift into a new direction. When we talk about these mutable new moons, full moons, eclipses, we have to talk about the mutability of them. You know, like we have fixed signs, we have cardinal signs. Fixed signs like to stay in place. They like to do one thing for an extended period of time. Cardinal signs like to start lots of new projects, where mutable signs land right in the middle. We can do both, but we want to find balance. We want to find equilibrium in these experiences. And that's what Libra wants. Libra wants to have that balance. So as we've gone with the flow with a lot of different things, this lunar eclipse, this moon being eclipsed here in the sixth house, can show us that there can be a direct correlation to focusing on something, gaining some insight into a deeper part of our own self. That Mercury Kazemi in the 12th house can help us to gain some clarity around some different things that we didn't know about. So, Libra risings, notice how that balance is evening out. Notice where the equilibrium is coming into your experience. And take a break. Allow rest as opposed to so much effort and work. Scorpio risings experience this full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces in the fifth house. In the fifth house of creativity, of romance. It can be of children, but it can also be of our creative endeavors, all things creative. In my own case, with this lunar eclipse culminating at 4 degrees, is going to be culminating right on my Saturn. Just recently had the Saturn return a little over a year and some change ago. And it's just coming back to the forefront of my own experience. When we have these lunar eclipses in the fifth house, it's just trying to show you, like, where's the culmination? What have we been working on that is coming to surface? And how are these things going to be shown to the world? How are they going to be expressed into your experience? Because this is a Jupiter ruled lunar eclipse, and Jupiter is moving through the 10th house of public role. So we can ask ourselves, what am I being seen for right now, knowingly or unknowingly? How am I going to show up when the time comes? All these different things, these different expressions can be coming to mind, and having the benefit of a Mercury cazimi in the 11th house can show us how we want to show up to community, how we need to show up to community, and the bending of that Uranus T square, making its expression over to the 11th house and the 5th house from the 8th, can tend to show us what needs releasing, what karmic debts need paying in order to make sure that we can move in the right direction, to make sure that we can do the things that we really want to do with our experience with this life. Sagittarius risings are experiencing the lunar eclipse in the 12th house. In the 4th house. Lunar eclipse in the 4th house of solitude, of home, of foundation, of roots, can bring some things up from the surface. Now, when we start to talk about the 4th house, we can talk about the home and how it's time to move out if we talk about it like on a very surface level form of experience. But when we start to talk about the 4th house, we can be letting something go, and a house that we've had, an old way of being that we've experienced for time and time again, possibly over the last 18 months or so. But when we start to talk about the ruler of this lunar eclipse, Jupiter in the 9th house, it can show us experiences to move away, to go to a far off land. But it can also show us a very spiritual understanding of things. Maybe our belief system is changing. Maybe we get an insight, get a clarity, or a deeper understanding of our roots, our upbringing, what we've learned from our childhood that we still hold on to, that needs to be changed, that needs to be let go of at this point in time. And notice how all of these different things are going to be playing a big part in our own public role, because once again, the sun is eclipsing the moon in this case. It is showing itself, it is expressing itself through our public role. So we are becoming what can be seen as the one who knows in what direction they want to go, the one who has a clear insight, a clear understanding of what's next. And we also have Uranus moving through the 7th house of endings right now, sending those T squares to the 10th house and the 4th house. So something's bound to change, friends. And it's going to start from the bottom, start from the roots, from home. Capricorn Rising, experiencing the lunar eclipse in the 3rd house. 3rd house is our daily experience. It is the people that we connect with. If you hear banging and bumping, there are people working on this house. So just so you know. But when we talk about the 3rd house lunar eclipse, there is something that needs to be transformed. There's something that we have learned from. There's an intuition that we can gain from our experiences as Capricorn Rising. The ruler of the ruler of the 3rd house for us is Jupiter, which is in the 8th house, and it is correlated with the karmic entanglements that we have been a part of, the esteem of others that we experience strongly, as causing us to take a turn. It is causing us to shift our day-to-day experience. And since the sun is eclipsing this moon in our 9th house, I always look at Mercury and see Mercury as a planet of communication and the planet that moves quickly, the planet of the mind in this case. But when we start to think about Mercury as the hermeticist, Mercury is far more than meets the eye. It is far more than just the speech, but it is the mind. It is the deeper understanding. And when we start to think of Hermeticism or the Hermetic order, Mercury knows many things that Mercury does not speak of. So when we start to think about the 9th house of higher learning and the 9th house such as religion or spirituality, forms of understanding in this way, maybe there's a great insight that's come unto us based off something that we learn about behind the scenes, something that we cherish dearly in our experience that has played a part, that has overcome our daily life, that has caused us to take a complete turn, that has caused us to shift our own daily experience. So, as a Capricorn rising, notice what's changing and why it's changing based off of what you know about your experience, what you may believe now. Aquarius risings have this lunar eclipse in the second house. The second house is closely correlated with our assets, closely correlated with our finances. The second house, eighth house axis. These can be called the money houses, but this is our money. Second house, eighth house is others' money, right? Or our efforts, our skills. And we have a lunar eclipse here in the second house, as Aquarius can show that our natural intuitions, our natural guidance towards the things that we want to do is has benefited us up to this point, and it's reaching that culmination point where we've gained pretty much all we need to know, all we need to learn from this experience before it begins to change, begins to shift, and come back into our own personal experience. How are we embodying these skills that we've learned? And what are we gaining from the outside sources that may have benefited us, that may have played a part in teaching us around these things in our lives? When we start to look at that Kazemi that's occurred in the eighth house, we can see just how beneficial the other can be, just how beneficial our outside sources can be to us gaining and learning and experience new things. And as an Aquarius rising, this is what usually can lighten Aquarius rising up. The relationship connections with people receiving from those outside sources, really being able to learn from the community. And just to mention the ruler of the second house here, Jupiter is in the seventh house of one-on-one relationship. Moving through that place can just show great benefit of the one-on-one relationship that we may be experiencing in our lives. And it doesn't necessarily have to be our spouse. It can be any person that we come in contact with, can be a teacher, can give us a guidance, a clarity, and insight. And now we move into the sign of Pisces, who has the great benefit of experiencing a lunar eclipse in the first house. Now, for some people, it may feel like a crisis, but we must understand that crisis in life is a phenomenal benefit. It is something that improves a person. Either they sink or they swim. And Pisces swims well. So, having a lunar eclipse in the first house can call for a great emotional understanding, we could say. Being that this is a North Node present lunar eclipse, we've learned many things about ourselves over these past eclipse seasons. As the North Node, the South Node has moved through our first house and seventh house, we've gained some clarity. And it's important to understand that Jupiter moving through the sixth house of service can begin to show us how life has changed. This is also the sixth house of health as well. So maybe our health has taken a turn and taught us many different things about ourselves, taught us how to cherish our own lives and our own experiences, and having the people around us, those one-on-one relationships, the people, the connections have helped us along these different experiences. And having that Kazemi that's moved through the seventh house, it can show us that whatever relationship, whatever conversation we may be having, can give us a clear insight into what we can do next, what we can do next to achieve our goals, to care for our health. And it can be something that's coming from the deepest parts of our experience, something that we weren't necessarily aware of. And those sudden shifts, those sudden changes in experience can help us to see them. They might cause us to have conversation with somebody we didn't necessarily think about at first. So many different things can come up from these lunar eclipses, friends, and we just have the benefit in life to experience such things. Lunar eclipse in Pisces can be an emotionally tumultuous time, but it can be a very insightful and intuition guided time. With all these different planets playing a part in this lunar eclipse, we see the lunar eclipse as a prominent experience, but we can also see how the other planetary bodies tell the story. If you've always been interested in getting a birth chart reading, you can go and sign up with me for one so we can talk about how these planets affect your own life. You can find it under this video, or you can find it at aligned-astrology.com. If you like the video, please remember to like the video and subscribe so that way someone like you can receive this information. Make sure other people can see the channel so it's not lost in the algorithm. Thanks so much, friends. This is Casey with Aligned Astrology. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.